Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis. I am so excited to be joined by Lydia Davies today. She is a musician of extraordinary capacity. Besides composing for motion pictures and films, she has done musicals, she's done commercials, and she's really taken the world by storm. 2 Emmy Awards. I mean, we are so honored and so flattered to have you. Welcome, Ms. Davies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. I feel so honored to be here today. It's very exciting to chat with you.
Sure. And just in case people can't pick it up, please share with us where you're talking to us from.
So I'm talking from Melbourne, Australia. It's about, 2 o'clock here, Friday afternoon.
Right the following day. So delighted. So we always like to kind of go back in time and try to understand how genius occurs. Where do some of your early inspirations for music in general, and then we'll get to your instrument. Where do some of your inspirations come from?
Well, I guess it all stems from my childhood when I was about 3 years of age in particular. Well, my parents met in a band. Dad was the drummer and Mum was the singer, and they played around Australia, more just sort of, wedding band singing.
Sure.
But growing up in the house, there was always music being played, all different artists, Diana Ross, Elton John, the Beatles, classical music, Beethoven, Bach. So that's sort of, I grew up always with music. And I think when I was about 3, my oldest sister was taking piano lessons, and she'd come home and would practice. She was about 6. And apparently I would jump on the piano after her and just work out by ear what she was playing. So my parents thought, oh, that's interesting. This little 3-year-old is playing what our daughter is learning, and she's learning it by ear. So they enrolled me in Yamaha Music School, which is music school, and you learn with a group of kids. They play music, you learn, songs all on the keyboard together. And it was at that school that they realized I had perfect pitch.
Wow.
So they put me into like an advanced composition class. And that was sort of the beginning of knowing what I wanted to do, to be a composer and compose for different medias. And I think I was about 10 when I first started songwriting. Wow. And my grandma had passed away and I wrote a song about her. And that was the first song I'd ever written. And then from then on, Mum said she took me to see Titanic, the movie.
Right. Yes.
And I was blown away by the soundtrack by James Horner. He's exceptional. And I just was writing all afternoon, and from then on, I just knew I wanted to be a film score composer or songwriter for other artists. And then my sister and I started singing together. She was the lead singer. I would songwrite and sing harmonies. We kind of went down the pop singer-songwriting side of things, close to getting a record deal, and it was all happening. But I personally wanted to be just more the songwriter and behind the scenes and be the composer, as opposed to the forefront of being a pop star.
Sure. And I've heard that often. I've talked to some people, and did you sense it was because my talent and I really sort of enjoy writing the song, or did you feel like, okay, there's just too much pressure to be upfront, or that really the singing part of it and the performing in that way isn't as enjoyable as the creative?
Yeah, for me, the singing upfront part wasn't the part that I enjoyed. It would just scare me quite. I'm not a singer, I should say. So I did, I knew my strengths and my weaknesses. And I just was more interested in the writing part of it, as opposed to being on stage and being the center of attention. So it was interesting. So I kind of wanted to do like some experience overseas in America in more like the business side of things, just to kind of gauge, you know, learn more about the industry. So when I was about 23, I went to New York and I was doing some work experience with someone with a record label, and he had to suddenly go to LA. So he said, I've got a friend who works for one of the biggest record companies in America. He's expecting you, go to this address. You know, you'll be working alongside him, shadowing him for about a week or so. It's a great opportunity. Make sure you do it. Go.
Sure.
So here I was, sort of in New York on my own, and went to this address, and I realized it was one of the biggest record labels ever. And I was pinching myself, so excited, didn't know really what to expect because it all happened really quickly.
Sure.
And I walked in, you know, I was waiting in reception. They said it was an A&R who I was going to be working alongside.
Sure.
They said, he's waiting for you. So I knocked on the door, walked in, and, you know, it was a bit of an uncomfortable experience because he was on a conference call, and I was sort of just walking in on this conference call, just sat in on it. Right. I thought, okay, maybe this is how he rolls, but, you know, whatever. And then he got off the call and was really, just made me feel quite uncomfortable, and was like, oh, damn, you know, why are you here? And I was just sort of, you know, explaining who I was and wanting to, you know, songwrite for artists and get into the industry, but sort of gain an insight to the business side of things. And so he said, oh, okay, well, play me some of your music. And I said, okay.
And he had a piano there?
I had like my laptop with,
sure.
So I just played him, you know, 3 or so songs, and he was like, oh, you're actually really good. I'm really impressed. So he got on the, you know, the phone, loudspeaker, put me in touch with the publishing deal, or the publishers of this record label, set up a meeting. Then he said, would you like to live here? And I said, oh, of course. It's just, you know, got to go try and get a visa and do all that. And he said, oh, well, you know, we can handle that. Called the department that dealt with all of that, made another meeting. So here I am pinching myself, just thinking, oh my goodness, all this is happening within the span of 15 minutes.
Right. And you were about 20 at the time.
Yeah, about 23. It was my first trip overseas, sort of on my own. Right. Yeah, so I was so excited, literally pinching myself, being like, is this happening? Like, if I just walked into this, you know, opportunity that's I've always dreamt of. Wow. And the next minute he was like, right, well, you know, let's go celebrate. Do you want to see the best view of Manhattan? And I was like, you know, sure. Like, I'm going to be learning and working alongside you for the next week. Open for whatever you think, you know, it's great to do. So he was family friends with the founder of the record label. Wow. So it was his place, actually. And so we went up, saw this incredible view of Manhattan. You know, he wasn't lying, it was amazing. And then the next minute I was sort of standing, it was 360-degree views of Manhattan. Right. And you could, looking over Central Park, and it was amazing. And the next minute he just came up behind me and started sexually touching me. And yeah, it was a really horrific experience. And I sort of obviously took him off me and just said, I have to go. You've got the wrong person. This isn't me. And left. And then he called me up saying, I've done all this stuff for you. When am I going to see you next? Expecting something in return. And I just said, you've got the wrong girl. Like, I'm not at all going to do that. And as my only path to get into the industry. and then he cancelled all the meetings, and that was that. And so I didn't go back where I was supposed to for that week. And that was a really confronting time of my life, where I felt really humiliated, really afraid, or just really angry at like the industry almost, that, you know, if you didn't have representation, I didn't have a manager at the time,
Right.
you know, how are you to be taken seriously as a female in this industry?
Right.
And it was quite the turning point where I decided I didn't want to do songwriting for pop artists, and I wanted to focus more on music for film and TV, which is what I sort of wanted to do when I was a lot younger. And on that same trip, I was actually going to Los Angeles, working alongside a composer who did music for trailers.
Wow. Okay.
And that would have been sort of the early stages of when trailers sort of had changed how they operated, and instead of sort of taking music from the score, it was a specific genre thing to do, is write music for trailers. And that after that was a whole different kettle of fish, completely different experience. I came back really excited and felt like that's what I wanted to do, and I didn't have to worry about going into meetings as much. So I started focusing on writing music for trailers. I did partner up with a friend at the time. He was a male, because I did feel like I needed some sort of male representation or partnership to actually be taken seriously in the industry.
Right. Maybe protected to a certain extent, just so people would listen to you and not this
exactly, you know, sort of, yeah, for sure. And that, you know, we were sort of writing together for a couple of years, but that sort of ran its course.
Right.
And then I got picked up with a sound house who I'm still with today, Squeaky Clean Productions. And I write commercials, do commercial music for them, and then freelance with trailers on the side and music for film and TV and documentaries. So that's kind of my overview.
Sure. Yeah. So let's, in a nutshell, sure. Let's go back and unpack some of that without trying to make it seem too inquisitive. Did you really have a sense that maybe there was a setup type of a situation, in that, oh, this person who sent me to New York to meet with this executive must have known, or should have known, or should have warned me, or given me some type of understanding of what I was getting myself into? Did you feel betrayed, even if you thought you could have trusted them in the beginning?
Yeah, I did. I thought, is this person supposed to be your friend, or is this how you both operate?
Right.
I actually never spoke to him again, and I was too embarrassed to tell anyone for a long time, or scared, because I just didn't know how people would take it. You know, here I am in one of the biggest record companies in the world, and I'm this nobody name. At the time, I didn't have it, too many accolades behind myself to sort of feel like I could speak up and someone actually be taken seriously. So yeah, I was pretty upset that I was put in that situation. I don't know if he knew that sort of was going to be the outcome of how everything happened, but being older now and looking back, I do think he was probably wary of the type of guy he was, and how he operated. Yeah. And
then the next question that springs to mind is, do you feel that the industry sort of really does blackball or make it really difficult to bring these things to the surface, because it may be seen as just one person's actions, and so they're rogue, or if you speak out, it could, you know, damage your reputation as much as speaking out against someone.
Yeah, I do feel that. It is shifting and it is changing, and there is more support, you know, the whole Me Too movement, and females getting behind each other a bit more. And it's still very prevalent, I think, though. And, you know, the music industry, in particular with composers, you know, occupies, I think, 1% of females. And
Wow.
it's, you know, really hard to sort of break that male dominated industry and, you know, land the jobs, the big jobs, because all the men are friends and
Right. All know each other. Sure.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a good transition to something I wanted to ask you about your current house that you're with. When you mentioned Squeaky House, tell us sort of about how an organization like that operates, and how you were able to find an organization like that, how somebody might be able to sort of follow in your footsteps to be at a place where they kind of more have an agency, as opposed to needing to go and meet with people themselves and run this risk of either A, not being taken seriously, certainly want them being harassed, but also just potentially not even getting in the front door.
Yeah, for sure. So how it all came about was quite organically. It happened. I wasn't really looking for it at the time, or, you know, I was still working out exactly which path I wanted to hone in on. But a good friend of mine invited me to Lisa Gerard's house, and she's the singer for Hans Zimmer's Gladiator. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with the score, but that beautiful voice that you hear is Lisa Gerard. Yeah. And so I was invited to her house. She lives about an hour out of Melbourne.
Right.
And I went there, and there was this other boy, Jesse, he works for Squeaky Clean as well. Right. And we were just chatting, and he was there because he had just written some music that Lisa had sung on. Right. And I had won this internship with a company in Sydney, and I was going there through APRA, which is sort of like BMI. Oh, is it BMG? What's right, your, yeah, BMG. And so I was going to Sydney. He's Squeaky Clean at the time, was more based in Sydney. Right. And he's like, oh, you'll have to come and pop in and meet the team when you're in Sydney next week. And, you know, sometimes they have freelancers that do commercials. Right. So you just never know. And I was like, oh, great, sounds good. So I popped in, and my producer now, who was there at the time, she's a really big advocate for females in the industry and really supportive. And she was sort of running out the door, but she was like, oh, I'm coming to Melbourne the next week. Sure. Let's have a meeting. Send me your music. I'd love to hear what you've done. And so we met up, and she offered me a job freelancing for them. And then that turned into a full-time job with them, like a year later. So that's how that kind of happened. And, you know, because she's heavily supports the females in the industry, it was like a breath of fresh air meeting sort of a female that, you know, I felt like I could trust and really safe. And they're a beautiful company. Everyone's really friendly. And yeah, it's a great team to work with.
Sure. Well, so refreshing to hear that in the end you were able to ideally wind up in an even better place. Talk to us about how important it is to be able to have your sound and your composition represented. And we're going to talk about one of those in a moment that's well known. Because I think that often that's something that can be overlooked, but part of it is being able to see if people like yourself can sort of express the essence of what you bring to a soundtrack.
Yeah, I think it's really important to stay true to yourself and to not not sort of get caught up with what everyone around you is doing. And, you know, there's always going to be sort of trends and things, but at the end of the day, what makes you stick out is having your own voice. And, you know, speaking from the heart through music is the best way to touch other souls and for other people to, you know, feel that emotion. So I think it's really important to try and not, get overwhelmed and compare yourself and think, oh, they're better or whatever. But yeah, I think it's very important.
Sure, absolutely. Digging a little deeper, I think some people may have the impression that you all have the luxury, even in the case of a trailer or a commercial, of being able to see the finished product and being able to use the visual. Help disrupt that with us with an example of how there may have been a time or very frequent times where you essentially have the general sense of where the director or where the composition needs to go, but you don't have a visual per se to marry it to.
So we're just going off what they have articulated in the story. I mean, we get all different forms of things sent to us. Sometimes it's a visual, sometimes it's just a script, sometimes it's a reference, a music reference. So sorry, what was the
So just trying to see if there was an example of one where you really didn't have a good visual, but you really used some of your other senses or other information to put the sound together, because that's certainly, the more abstract it gets, I think it can be a challenge, but it can also be exciting.
Yes, for sure. So it probably happened with Wonder Woman, with the trailer Wonder Woman, and we were sent, I actually had written this track at the time in my parents' studio in the garage, and it was this dramatic, dramatic emotional sort of cue. And my publisher came to me and said, oh, we're looking for, a dramatic orchestrated piece. Do you have anything? And I was like, oh, I've actually got this idea. I can, flesh it out a bit more. And he gave me a bit more of an idea of what they were after. And I sent that through. And then it would have been about 10 days later, he contacted me and said, it's looking really promising that it's going to be used and picked up, that, we can embellish it a little bit more. And that was crazy how that all came about, because it ended up winning one of, an award for the Golden Globes, best trailer, I think, and best action. Yeah. And so, it was interesting because that was a track that I'd sort of written a story in my head without any distractions and too much information, and it ended up, doing quite well.
To say the least. And I want to tease out that emotion and that moment. Just walk us through it, if you were watching from home, or sort of how you came to find out about the nomination and then the whole process, because this is something as a relatively new artist, although you had started at the age of 3, so you already had 20 years in the game.
I feel like I've been here forever.
But just walk us through sort of what that felt like to you, your family, and the way you found out.
So it was, the case of what I learned fairly quickly in the industry is anything can change that quickly. So until it's being released and it's out, you're kind of just treading on eggshells until that happens. So I remember waking up at about 4 a.m., checking my phone to see if my publisher had, been in touch, and he just sent the trailer, and nothing else, just sent the trailer, because you're always competing with other trailer houses and other composers and things. And I opened it, and it was my cue, and I was just screamed.
Tell us what you mean by that when you say your cue.
So the piece that I wrote, the music for the Wonder Woman trailer, the official trailer, and I was just yeah, it was so exciting because this sort of young girl from Melbourne writing this track in her parents' garage studio ended up being on this, winning a Golden Globe. So it was sort of crazy. It just made me think that, I always believed in myself, but it just sort of solidified that feeling that, if you believe in yourself enough and hard work and determination, you can make dreams come true. So it was, it was a beautiful moment for all around.
Exactly. So magnificent. I don't think we could have had a better setup. Let's just take one moment to listen to your trailer for Wonder Woman.
Thank you.
And this may be something you thought of, but it is a paradoxical question. You kind of answered it a little bit. To what extent do you feel empowered by a superhero like that in some ways may indirectly represent your own story? As you stated, you're one of a few composers that were privileged enough to even work on this, which is in a few houses. And it's a super blockbuster type of a movie. And in your own way, by being able to achieve the impossible, so to speak, you've overcome and represent a Wonder Woman, no doubt, to your family, your city, and certainly your friends. Have you ever thought about the parallels of her trailer in that movie kind of being your breakout Emmy Award?
I have. I mean, I guess there's similarities with, the strength that she withholds within, and just believing and just fighting for it and continuing to sort of pursue what you believe in, I guess, if that makes sense.
No. Absolutely.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that too much, to be honest, but that sort of is the first thing that jumps to mind when I think about it. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. I also would love you to just sort of tell us another project, whether it was quite as magnanimous or even just a passion project that you really enjoyed being part of, because the process was very positive.
For sure. Another one would have been Beauty and the Beast, which actually came before Wonder Woman. And that was my very first trailer. That it was sort of, I think I'd submitted maybe 2 tracks. And it was interesting because this track also came from, I was just playing on the piano, and it was inspired from a documentary or something that I had seen. And then it ended up becoming a custom track for the Beauty and the Beast trailer. So, incorporating Taylor's All This Time into my trailer cue. And that was super rewarding, and probably another pinching moment, because it sort of went on for about 6 months, where, because it became a custom job, there was so many different sound houses and composers that we were competing against. And I remember hearing the news. I was in, I think, Las Vegas, when firstly I heard that, Disney has heard your track and they really love it. They want to make some changes. They want us to incorporate, the song into your trailer piece. And so there was lots of back and forth for months on end, and then you'd hear nothing, and then you'd hear something. Right. So that was, another massive highlight, where it just was like, okay, I can do this.
Absolutely. Another fantastic setup. You're making my job and life so easy. Let's take a listen to your trailer from that little old movie, Beauty and the Beast. Tell us about, we talked about one sort of difficult experience, but where you really maybe were able to find sort of inner strength or an inspiration from someplace that you didn't expect, or something did much better than you could have imagined. But the process was a lot more difficult and riddled maybe with stress or angst, and that you were surprised you were sort of able to pull it out and pull it off.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I just probably say that the industry, you're constantly going through ups and downs. There's so many highs and then lows where because it's so competitive, you kind of sometimes, if you haven't won a job in a while, you doubt yourself and you think, hang on, like, am I any good? And, so for me personally, that's what I find. It's sort of this constant roller coaster of, am I going to be able to survive the industry and things like that. I think probably during the pandemic in particular, it's been, some challenging times just with everything that's going around. I actually did some music for a documentary which was on miscarriages last year. So I had to score the music for the documentary, and it was obviously a really emotional topic that, I personally haven't gone through, but some of my close friends have, and I found that quite challenging, but also really rewarding being part of such a special documentary as well. Just sort of trying to find the voice of the story, really. But I was happy with what I did in the end. And yeah, just, watching scenes on repeat, scoring music to it